are never done with Maya MacGuineas, president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, for two reasons. The federal budget's not going away, our debt and our deficit. And just importantly, Maya was an 8th Dan or a 9th Dan in judo, and she's now up to 10th Dan, so she can self-defend herself in our fractious Washington. Maya, in all your years in Washington, have you ever seen it so violently polarized?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, what's going on right now, I think about this a lot because this is a moment where we are so distracted with our infighting in Washington. We are absolutely missing the big picture of what's going on externally. And there are external threats from rivals around the world that should be unifying us and helping us function. And I fear it leaves us in an immensely vulnerable place. So we have these huge parallel risks here, which is our fiscal situation leaves us really vulnerable, and our political situation leaves us really vulnerable. And the noteworthy thing is now it's within the parties, not just between the parties.
Explain to all of our listeners and viewers the one item that's front and center, which is our rising interest expense. Translate how we should interpret, as a round number, a $1 trillion government interest expense.
It is a bright, flashing warning sign that the U.S. fiscal situation is unsustainable. So $1 trillion in interest is sort of shocking, but absolutely sort of predictable because we're borrowing so much every year and it's getting worse even when the economy is so strong. Interest is the fastest growing part of the federal budget, eclipsing healthcare that was for quite some time. We spend more on interest payments than we do on all spending for children under 18 at the federal level. And within just a few years, we're going to be spending more in interest than we are in national defense. Clearly, it's squeezing out all these important priorities. Whatever your particular ideology is, there's not going to be as much money for it because interest comes first. And just let's keep in mind that when interest rates were low, there were all sorts of people saying, borrow more, borrow more. It's almost like it's free. It's not. It wasn't. And this is the moment where it shows you that if and when interest rates go up, and they almost always do, the huge debt load that you have as a result of people encouraging to borrow more leaves you immensely vulnerable and squeezes out other priorities, both investments, national security, and anything else that we might want to be spending or preparing for.
Yesterday, money got a little bit more free, or at least it's a little less expensive. How much of a bond rally are we away from being sustainable on a fiscal picture?
It's not coming from a bond rally. It's coming from changes to the structural budget situation. So the markets can do whatever they are. I mean, when interest payments weren't the fastest area in the budget, that was a big relief. It took some pressure off. But listen, you still have huge growth in spending from the aging of the population and ongoing healthcare costs. So Social Security and Medicare are going to continue to grow much faster than the overall economy. Revenues are not going to keep up with it unless our policymakers do something. And I know that feels kind of difficult to imagine right now, but unless they do something hard, which is look at the real budget, the entitlements and the tax side, and make some changes, this unsustainable separation between the two and growing deficit and debt is going to continue.
You talk about how, based on how things are going, it doesn't seem like they're actually going to do anything. We're more focused on Elbowgate with Kevin McCarthy yesterday in the House than we are on tangible gains with respect to reducing the deficit. Do you feel like you're banging your head against the wall when you talk to the different Congress members and try to get them to hook into more sustainable solutions?
You know, I don't right now because there's been a very, very encouraging sign both in the House and the Senate in a bipartisan effort, which is to put together a fiscal commission. And what the commission would do is look at all these parts of the budget over the next year. It's no guarantee it works. It's still really hard choices, and Congress doesn't like to do anything difficult right now. What they like to do is cut taxes and grow spending and give away things. But the benefit of a commission is it gives members a chance to actually build a working relationship where it doesn't come to blows, build trust, understand the issue better, and give some political cover if they come up with recommendations to be adopted. Right. One great thing would be if they could come up with a Social Security fix, given that program is headed towards insolvency in about a decade.
Maya, how close are we to another Simpson-Bowles effort?
So, as I said, it's bipartisan, bicameral. That's a great start. But there's already lots of opposition for no reason but political. I don't know how you can look at a program that's headed towards insolvency and say, hey, stop, don't try to fix it. But that's what a lot of people are saying. You're hearing from the White House criticisms about the notion of a fiscal commission. All sorts of people, I think, want to politicize these issues. But overall, I think there is broad-based support, and I think it's growing. And basically what I see is at the end of the year, we are going to have a lot of borrowing for emergencies and legitimate emergencies, perhaps also some tax cuts that should be offset. They're talking about a deal where you would extend some business tax cuts in return for the child tax credit. That's a borrowing deal and a borrowing deal. But if they do end up borrowing a lot more, I think this clamor for doing something, and the fiscal commission is the best mechanism to do it, is only going to grow. So I could see that being part of a deal at some point soon. They're going to have to do something. The warnings from, rating agencies and the Congressional Budget Office, they're just going to keep coming.
Big time. Maya, thank you for your perspective this morning. Maya MacGuineas there of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget.